So, I'm gonna go ahead and start the interview now. Today is August 25th, 2023. It's about 2:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are in the home of Mr. Scott Camille in Gainesville, Florida. And today I am here with, this is Donovan Carter with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. And I'm here with...
John Briggs.
Thank you, Mr. Briggs, for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Can you spell your name for the record?
Last name?
First and last name.
John Briggs.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Briggs. And can you tell us what brings you to Gainesville today? What are we doing in the home, Scott?
Well, I live here.
Okay.
Lived here during the trial. Left for 14 years, and because of my employment, my career, moved back about 10 years ago.
All right. So, what year were you born in? You were born and raised in Gainesville?
No.
Okay.
Came here to go to school in 1970.
Okay. And where were you born?
Norwalk, Connecticut.
Oh, wow. Connecticut. And what year?
1951.
Okay. Wow, Connecticut to Florida, that's a long ways.
Well, I've been here for 68 years.
Oh, wow. So you've been
In Florida for 68 years.
You haven't been back to Connecticut much often?
Oh, well, I still have some cousins and stuff there, but yeah.
Your home's down here. Okay, I get it.
Most of the family has passed on or just don't go there anymore. I used to go there as a child in the summers and stuff, but that's it.
No, I understand. I think I'd trade in the snow for the palm trees as well. I think I would too.
Mm-hmm.
Did you, so what brought you to, you said you went to school here?
Yeah, I went to Santa Fe for a year or so and then dropped out.
Okay. So can you tell me about what it was like growing up in your home? Did you come from perhaps a military family? Did you serve?
No military affiliation in my family at all, no.
Okay.
No, but it was a home. Both my mom and dad worked. They were in the hospitality industry.
Mm-hmm. Siblings?
I have a brother who lives in California who's 83, formerly a Catholic priest, no longer.
Okay, wow.
And a sister who has
sister.
passed away a couple years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. What's your sister's name?
Janice.
Janice. And your brother's name?
James.
James. Wow, James.
Jimmy,
John, and Janice.
Yeah, and my father's name, of course, was James, and my mother's name was Jean. So
wow.
All Jays. All Jays.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, you said you were in Gainesville for the trial, and during the trial, I should say.
Well, yeah, I lived in Gainesville at the time.
Okay.
When I got involved in this whole thing.
Okay, understood. And can you talk more about your involvement? What did that look like at the time? How did you become involved? Or?
Stan Mickelson was my roommate. We lived together. I was going to school and I was working. And, yeah. He was involved with the Vietnam Veterans Against the War, and I, of course, sympathized with their situation.
Yeah. Had you heard much? Did you have, I guess, thoughts about the war before becoming involved? Or?
Oh, I was not a fan. I went to school to avoid the draft, basically.
Yeah, I understand. Can you talk about perhaps, what it was, talk a little bit more about what it was like at that time?
How so?
In terms of, let's see, how do I phrase this question? You said that you sympathized with Stan's...
With the organization,
With the organization and
they were trying to stop the war. I was not a fan of the war.
And was this a common sentiment held by many young people at the time, or was it I know it was
For
taboo.
those that were aware of what was going on, yes, I think so.
Okay. Wow. And let's see.
Yeah, how I came to live with Stan might be useful.
Yes.
My best friend in high school was Stan's next door neighbor. And my best friend and I were surfers in high school. And Stan was pretty close to my best friend at the time. And when he moved to Gainesville, and later I moved to Gainesville, I sought him out and we connected. I mean, we were not friends, but became associates, and of course then became roommates, and then became friends, and then co-defendants.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's kind of how it went.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So could you talk a little bit about the onset of the trial and how it, or I guess how you became involved in the trial and kind of how you involved?
Well, I was, Stan was doing, his life, and I was doing mine, and I was working at a waterbed store, and I had gone to a friend's parents' house in North Carolina to just break away for a little while. And I don't know if I got the whole sequence right. It's been a long time, but I got a call from my parents when I got back from my trip to somewhere, anyways, and said the FBI had come to their hotel, their place of business, and told them that I was supplying weapons to the VVAW. And I immediately told him, I said, you call that agent and tell him that I will be there in 24 hours and I'll be happy to sit down with him. And so I hopped on a bus. It was a 14-hour ride from Gainesville to Fort Lauderdale. And an FBI agent came over to my house. This is all during what was already going on with the grand jury and so forth and so on, but I was not involved.
Yeah, right.
So I sat down with him for about 20 minutes, and the questions that they were asking were very uncomfortable. But the agent led off with, how much I cooperated today could determine, the rest of my life kind of thing. And I said, you know what? I think we're done here. And so when that concluded, I think I called Stan or called Scott, and he said, yeah, something's going on here. And so I think I got back to Gainesville, and that's when I got the subpoena for the grand jury within the next couple of days.
Wow. Do you remember perhaps what year this was, or maybe how old you were at the time?
I was, I think it was probably 71, 72. Can't tell you exactly. Probably 71. And so, then I got subpoenaed in front of the grand jury, and met with the attorneys that are already involved with the grand jury investigation for the VVAW, and of course refused to testify in front of the grand jury based on my rights, and they found me in contempt and put me in the slammer until I decided to talk. Of course, everybody was working on the outside on my behalf, and then 11 days in jail in the federal division of the Leon County Jail. They released me.
So they had you in contempt in Leon County, not here in Alachua.
Right, it was in Tallahassee.
Okay, gotcha.
That's where the grand jury was convened.
Gotcha. Wow. Wow.
You want me to go on?
Please do.
So after I got back out of jail and people brought me back to Gainesville, met up with Stan, and we talked about what was going on, this, that, and the other, and I had to go check on the waterbed store that I was working at, and because I had been gone for 10 days or whatever, so. I walked out to 13th Street and hitchhiked a ride downtown to check out the store. And this guy picked me up. We're driving down 13th Street from Northwest 42nd Avenue, and we had just passed 10th Avenue, and the guy ran a yellow light that I was riding with. And he looked in his rearview mirror and saw about 3 other vehicles following him through the light. And he pulled into where old Mother Earth used to be. I don't know what it's called now, on 13th Street. And I think I had a Heineken with me at the time. And I got out of the car and walked over to throw my bottle away and turned around, and all 3 of these cars came in. And they all jumped out, and they asked me if my name was John Briggs. And I said yes. And they said, well, you've just been indicted by the federal grand jury in Tallahassee. You need to come with us.
Wow.
And that's how it all started.
Wow. Did they identify themselves as any group? Or
Oh, yeah, they were FBI agents.
Wow. That's quite a story.
And then probably within an hour or so later, they also went to the house and they had indicted Stan too. So Stan and I both were indicted at the same time.
So, how much longer from the time of your indictment to the time of your trial? Was it swift? Did it take?
Oh no. We had multiple pretrial hearings. Yeah, it was probably a year and a half of pretrial hearings and, just the process. Which was, I was only 22 or 23 years old, so I was like kind of in a state of shock.
Yeah, absolutely. That's frightening for sure. Wow. Let's see. So I have a few specific questions about the trial itself, but before I get to that, I want to try to. Well, no, I do want to ask about. Yeah, let's move on to the trial. So, what did you think about the prosecutor who was brought in, kind of later in the trial? I don't have the name here.
Is it Caruth?
I believe so. I believe I remember the name Caruth from my readings.
Yeah. Didn't like him.
Didn't like him?
I wasn't a fan.
Could you talk more about that? Could you tell me why? What didn't you like about him?
Well, I mean, we were just kind of, being railroaded, it seemed to me. I mean, I'm an outsider. I wasn't involved in the old inner makings of everything, but it seemed to me from what I was learning at the time that it was just an unusual circumstance. And during the time, I think that it was just the Justice's Department, their motivation was to quiet the Vietnam veterans because they were speaking the truth and they wanted to continue their war.
And had you heard of perhaps like other indictments like the Harrisburg 7 or the
Yes.
Camden 28 by that time?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess when or how did you learn of these other groups as well?
Just through the media.
From the
I mean, I
media,
wasn't, involved, tracking, finding,
Right. Okay.
Well, I was a pretty innocent guy at the time.
No, I understand.
I mean, that's what I felt. I was,
Yeah.
So it was a bit overwhelming.
Absolutely. I can imagine. Like, I'm only 24 myself, and I can't imagine being like 22 and, all of a sudden
Being swept into
something
the
huge
legal
like that.
system in a way that you never even imagined.
Exactly.
I know. So, yeah.
Exactly. Wow. So, do you have any perhaps standout memories of either like the pre-trial hearings or the trial itself, or?
Pre-trial, one time we brought in, we had subpoenaed, I think it was at the time the Attorney General John Mitchell for a hearing. That was pretty notable. The other time during the trial was the episode where the defendants and their attorneys were given a meeting room across the hall from the courtroom. And after court one day, I was leaning up against the wall and I heard something, and someone else also heard it and mentioned that there's somebody else in this other room over there. And that's when they found the two FBI agents in the closet, I guess either trying to listen in or bug the room, or because we had phones in there.
Right.
And then of course then all of a sudden we had to have a hearing on that.
Yeah.
And of course they blew that off. They thought we were bugging them, and it just went.
Wow.
It was very crazy.
Wow. Absolutely. Yeah, that is crazy. I can't imagine. Like, even when I first heard that story, I was like, no way. The FBI got that bold to put.
Well, I don't
agents
know. Maybe they were checking their own lines. I don't know. It's possible.
Absolutely.
But the way things were going, it didn't seem like that was a viable option.
That was the case. Wow. So I want to talk a little bit more about the what's the word? It's on the tip of my tongue. After the deliberation, and you all are found not guilty. Can you talk about, I guess, maybe what that felt like, or how that?
Well, I can remember while they were deliberating, we were playing touch football downstairs. And when the verdict came through, again, I'm just a kid. I think I was the first one out of the courthouse. Of course, the media was there, and I just walked up in front of it and said, "The jury has found us guilty," because I forgot the non part. But yeah, I've been trying to find that one online, but I haven't been able to do that. But yeah, no, it was pretty exhilarating. I mean, shoot, we'd been dealing with it for more than a year and a half, probably, and I mean, certainly it was nice to see the justice system work the right way.
That's right. That's right. Right. Yeah. I hear that completely. I imagine it was a nerve-wracking game of football, or just at least.
We were pretty confident.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
we were pretty confident.
Okay. That's good.
I mean, our whole defense was just a couple of expert witnesses. We didn't have any, rebuttal witnesses to any of their, they paraded people up for 3 weeks. So, most of which just caught me off guard. I mean, I was pointed to as being in the room, and I don't remember being in the room when that was done or this was said, or I don't remember you. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you think that the result would have been the same in, like, perhaps other parts of Florida, or even like other parts of the U.S. even?
I don't know. You get 12 different people in 12 different places. They may come up with a different. They came up with the right one though in Gainesville.
That's right. I think so too. Wow, that's amazing. So, how had you thought of the legal system before the trial? Like, was it something that you didn't really think of?
I wasn't politically involved. I mean, I was just a kid going away to college, trying to figure out what I was going to be and who I was going to be, and just kind of got swept up, and I had to kind of adjust on the fly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And certainly people like Scott and Stan and the others, they've been through a war. They've already had become men, and I was just figuring out how to be one. So,
yeah, I get that.
But I felt like I needed to, make sure that I stood up for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It takes definitely a lot of courage to do something like that, and I don't know how I would have, responded or reacted to being swept up in something so vast and so, this huge conspiracy, I guess,
or supposed conspiracy.
Correct. Alleged conspiracy, supposed conspiracy.
I get it.
I want to ask you about kind of the end of the war. The end of the war in Vietnam, I should say. When you learned of the war's end, how did that make you feel?
I was glad.
You're glad.
No more people dying.
Absolutely. Did you feel perhaps
that maybe we helped it bring to an end
or
sooner?
Perhaps.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so, because I know the trial was pretty well televised, and circumstances were made aware, and that probably brought a lot of people into the movement. Whether it had an effect, I hope.
Oh, yeah. And would you say that you kind of, I'm thinking of this motif that you kind of touched on a few times, talking about, I was just a young kid who got swept up in all this, and I want to know, like, John Briggs before, right? Before the trial, before being swept up, and how is he different, or perhaps how's after John Briggs? How is he different? What has he learned? Does he move differently? Does he think differently?
Well, I think several years after the trial, we had filed suit against I don't even know exactly, probably the Justice Department and members of the prosecution and whatever. There was a time after the trial that I was looking over my shoulder quite a lot. So there was a little paranoia there, and I think I confirmed many times that they were following us around to see if we slipped up or do something wrong.
Wow.
But I was, it was 1971, 1972. I mean, I was a long-haired hippie. So I did the things that hippies did. I sometimes worked, I sometimes didn't. I crashed at people's houses. Eventually found, during the trial, a friend of mine gave me an opportunity to start working and learn how to do recording. So I worked in a recording studio and eventually went to work for a local music store where I spent 18 years and did live sound for local bands.
Wow.
And, for the last 40 years, I've been involved in the music business and more as a manufacturer's rep, as a sales guy, selling for multiple manufacturers and to music stores and contractors and integrators.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that's what I've been doing. That's what I'm still doing. I can't even believe I'm still doing it, but I am.
Wow, that's amazing. So, in these last over 40 years you've been in Gainesville, how much would you say that the city itself has changed?
A lot. Yeah.
What are some of the biggest?
I left in 98, 99, I think. My daughter was about 7 or 8. And we moved to Melbourne Beach area. This town is called in the Atlantic, but nobody knows where that is. But it's, everything on the coast is one town after another. But to get her into better schools down there, and we stayed there for 14 years through her high school, and then she eventually came to Gainesville to go to school. And then my job changed, where my territory got shifted. And so it made more sense for me to be back in Gainesville, and so we moved back to Gainesville.
Wow.
But I've been just a regular citizen for 50 years. I have a wife, I have a daughter, I have a grandson.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So, a long way from a long-haired hippie, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are all my questions on that. Is there anything else you want to say or talk about?
Well, I think that really covers it.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Briggs.
You're very welcome.
Thanks.